49 degrees. We got to get this booth warmed up. I know it's Florida, but it is cold out here, especially when you have that amount of airflow blowing in to a spray booth. So today we're going to talk to you guys about painting your car in the cold weather. Is it the best thing to do? And do you have the right setup to paint your car if it is cold out? So there's definitely a lot of other areas that are going to be colder than Florida, but these paints and products that are in the body shop are designed to work around an optimal temperature. That way they can guarantee that product is going to cure fully and you're going to have a nice outcome. So all right, so we're going to start out with the body man and the repair materials that they're using here in our shop, and these are going to be based off of what product you're using and how that product was designed to be used. This is a 2K product. You guys see it has two sides of this tube that gets mixed together through the tip. That's gonna mix this product up. But it does have times that it is recommended for you to use. So if you're gonna be using something like this, on the front of it, it's gonna show you the times. This one has a 3-minute work time, which means you have 3 minutes to work with it before it starts to set up. And then this one here has a 40-minute paint time, which means in 40 minutes, you're able to paint this without it still releasing some of the chemicals that it does. So the last part here is a 2-hour cure time. So this is gonna be based off of a certain temperature that the manufacturer designed this product to work for. That's why they have different speeds and different work times. So this is just one product. All right, so this here is another product that obviously the body men use a lot in body shops. This is a filler, and this is the 3M Platinum Select Filler. The work time for this here product with the right amount of hardener that is recommended by 3M is 4 minutes. Your shape time is 8 minutes. Your sand time is 20 minutes. And then you can prime this product within 45 minutes after it is applied and sanded. So one thing you want to check out when you're using these products on the back is some of their recommended things. So one of the first things you can see right here on the surface preparation, it says best if used above 45 degrees, because it's going to really drastically change the way that this product is going to work. So when something is too cold, it's not going to cure the way that it needs to, and that's when you start to misuse a product. Through the years, I've seen body men put more hardener in them, and when it is too hot out, you'll see some of the body men, they used to make that product the honey that would slow it down. So these products are designed to work in an optimal temperature. Make sure you check with the TDS sheets to see if what you're doing is the right application, because each time you change the way that product was designed to work, you're gonna lose some of the integrity of that product, and it's not gonna perform the way that it was designed to. All right, so now we're gonna talk about primer. This is one that had gotten some repair work done to it down the side, and it is a black vehicle. The body men at this shop finish off their work in a 220 grit scratch, which leaves it nice and fine. That way, if this primer was to sink in, it's not gonna show itself because you have a fine scratch. So one thing you definitely have to do when you're doing repair work is finish that repair off smooth and follow the recommendations from the manufacturer of the primer. Because if you do not, and you do it coarser and you get a scratch that's out here further than the repair, if you're on metal, you can have 80 grit and prime over it. But anything that is porous like paint, you're gonna wanna make sure that you have no less than a 180 grit scratch, or you are gonna have shrinkage with your product. So these primers are meant to go over a certain sand scratch that they know when it pulls down, it's not gonna show itself. So if you go with something too coarse and then this product locks up the way that it's supposed to based off of the recommended time and temperature, you're gonna have a good outcome. If you don't follow those rules, you're gonna have the sand scratches settling down. So that's where the climate and the temperature really comes into play. So if you were to prime this job while it's cold out, but it seems like it's dry when you go to sand it. Then you paint the job, you bring it outside, and it sits out in the parking lot. And you never did get a true cure with your primer. Now your primer is going to settle down in any of the repair work that is coarser than the 180 recommended scratch from the manufacturer, and you're going to see it. That's why it is very crucial to the temperatures in a body shop to make sure that you get a sound repair. So that's why if you've ever seen some of the hot rod guys, they'll take their cars, they'll do their body work, they'll prime that car, and they'll sit that thing out in the sun for weeks and weeks and let all those products gas out and settle, because if you sand that product before it's fully cured, it's gonna cure after it is painted, and that is when you're gonna have some problems. So make sure you take your time and get these jobs handled the way that they need to. And one thing that you can do is get a better product to use. So over here at this shop, if we're not using the 2K, we're using the UV, which dries immediately based off of a UV light. That's one product in the cold weather that would work really well, and I used it the other day. I had to go to a shop, the painter was sick, we needed to get things primed up immediately and painted. We brought in the UV primer, hit it with the light, and boom, we were ready to paint these jobs. So we didn't sacrifice the repair, we used a different product to achieve a nice quality job. So this is something you definitely want to take into consideration, especially if you're a do-it-yourselfer guy and you're not in a time crunch to repair these jobs. So we here at this shop do production work, and we have different products and different tools to still give you a quality job when we're repairing them and give that customer that quality outcome they're looking for. So that's just one stage of the repair that is very, very crucial, because you can do a nice, awesome paint job, and then in 2 weeks, that customer will come back, and I've seen it through the years, especially around winter time, that those sand scratches will settle down and you'll have to buff it out. And if you don't have enough product on there, you're gonna have to repaint it. So make sure that you're following all the recommendations from the TDS sheets and the manufacturer of your paint and repair materials to get the best outcome. All right, so now I'm gonna show you some of the curing machines and different products that we have here at this shop. So this here is an infrared light, which you use with the 2K products to speed up the urethane. And this is a very nice unit. And what this will do is it'll dry that primer from the inside out. So if you've ever been around the body shop a long time, you'd see some of the old heat lamps. They were actually bulbs that would heat up that panel and warm up that primer. But what that did was it would skin over that primer and not really lock it up from the bottom. These new lights, they're designed to dry that product from the inside out. That way you have a nice quality repair once it's all done. So that's just one thing that we use here at this shop. All right, so this here is my UV light, and this one I love because it's portable. You got the case, you can take it where you need to go if you're ever working at a different shop and you don't have that big bulky unit. And this one here still does a big area because it's got a nice size light on it. So this one is battery powered. You don't have any cords, but it has that massive light that is gonna allow you to do a nice size repair with it. So let's get over now to the spray booth and I'll show you why this setup is ideal in the cold weather. All right, so our booth is set up with heat and we're running a natural gas. So some booths run off propane, some run off natural gas, and some do have the infrared lights on the walls. So when I was starting out in this business, I first started out in a booth with no heat, and it was a single wall booth. So this is an insulated double construction on this here product. So it's like a house. The better the insulation, the better the construction, the more it's gonna hold in the heat in this spray booth, and you're not gonna lose that while you're baking it. So back in the day, like I told you, that old booth I sprayed in used to get phenomenally cold, and we did a lot of tricks that you weren't really supposed to be doing in order to get those jobs moving through that shop. So you had to do what you had to do back then, and nobody wanted to hear that you couldn't paint their car because it was too cold out. So we used to do different tricks, and those days are over for me. We've got the right setup here now at Crash Champions to do the job the way it's needed to. So right now the booth is actually 49 degrees inside that booth. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna heat it up, but before we do that, we're gonna go in there and I'm gonna show you guys why it's crucial to make sure you have heat when you're spraying a job. All right, so now we're in the booth, and this temperature of this here booth, you guys seen, was at 49 degrees. I like to use these laser guns, that way I can see what is the temperature of the panel. and it is a 62-degree panel. So to me, I want to get that panel warmed up to around the 70 mark. To me, 70 to 80 degrees to me is an ideal temperature for the metal as well as the spray booth. So you got to think about it. When you're using a spray booth with heat and you bake these jobs, they are basing that off of the metal temp. So if you have your booth set at about 150 degrees, the car itself isn't gonna reach that temperature unless that heat is set above it. So you want one of these to see, are you getting a full cure when you're baking your product, to see if that metal temp is where the recommended manufacturer wants it. So let's go ahead, get this booth warmed up. All right, so as we're waiting for that booth to warm up, I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit about some of the products here in the paint shop. So they do make different clears that are designed to cure faster. That doesn't mean that they're made to be used in that cold weather. That just means that this is a product that is designed to dry on its own without as much heat and time. So they make these snap clears where you got about 15 minutes without even heating them up to dry. That's still based off of the ideal temperature. So you can use different products to speed up your paint jobs, but you lose something on the tail end of it. So if you've ever sprayed a speed clear, you'll see that some of them don't hold their gloss as well as others, because anytime you speed up a product, you lose something else with it. So I like to spray slow products, and anybody that's been in the business a long time will tell you, use the slowest products you have to get the nicest paint job. But in a production shop, sometimes things have to be sped up to move these cars, and that's where using a good quality product is gonna set you apart from the rest of the shop. So we use a top of the line product here, Glasurit, and all their clears, whether they're their speed, their normal, their ultimate, their show car clear, it is all a beautiful product and works great. So all right, so now that we have our cabin set at 80, and it is at 80, let's go see where our metal temp is on the vehicle. We've got 70 degrees now on the panel. Even though the booth is at 80, you're gonna lose some of the temperature from your parts of the vehicle. That's why the manufacturer of the paints bases the cure time off of the metal temp. So depending on what clear you're using and what hardeners, they have a time and they have a temperature that they want that panel to be at for that time. That way they have a full cure. And in a production shop, that's gonna be crucial to you being able to get these cars wet sanded, buffed, washed up, and back to the customer and still give them a quality job. So now that we have our temperature at 70, that's ideal. Let's go ahead and get our sealer on it. We'll start basing it, and then we'll check our clear once we are all finished up. All right, now that we have our sealer applied at the right temperature, it's gonna cure up and it's gonna allow us to put our base on. This is a solvent sealer, so you do not want to apply a water-based product on top of a solvent product. Having the temperature in the booth and setting that is gonna allow us to get a nice outcome. So we'll let that tack up. I'll show you guys how it's gonna dull out, and we're gonna know we're ready to apply our base coat. All right, that's the base coat. Once that flash is off, we'll go in there and we'll hit it with our clear coat, and then we'll bake it, and we'll check our metal temp and make sure it is at the right temperature for the right amount of time for the product we're using. So all right, so now we're gonna bake the job, and we have our timer set here. It's got the purge, it's got the flash, it's got the first bake, it's got the second bake, and then it's got the final bake. You wanna bake this stuff for 30 minutes, and you want the metal temp at 140 for 30 minutes. So until it gets up to that temperature, it's gonna be in the purge and flash stages, and then once it hits its final temp, it'll go for 30 minutes. So that is key to making sure that you get the right bake on the product that you're using. So with this one here, being that we have to have our metal temp at 140 for 30 minutes, we are gonna have the booth set at 160 because the temperature is gonna be less for the parts and the vehicle than it's reading for the booth. So we'll go ahead, bake it at 160 for 30 minutes, and that's gonna give us 140 on the parts or the vehicle that you're painting. So let's go ahead and bake it now. All right, so I was explaining to you guys that this is a double wall booth with insulation in the middle of it. So look at, while we're baking this at 160 plus degrees, the outside's only 78, 79 degrees. So that's letting you know that this is a very good booth, which is gonna hold in that heat, and it's not gonna waste a lot of gas to get this thing heated up to that temperature that we need to make sure that we got a good cure. So if you have a regular single wall booth, I do have one, that's my personal booth, it's just an old school single layer booth, you are gonna get a lot more cold inside that booth, and you're gonna let out a lot of heat if you're baking it. So having a good quality setup is gonna really help out with saving on gas as well as keeping your shop cool. So if this thing was radiating heat out of it because it was a thin single wall booth, this shop would be a lot hotter being that it's an AC shop. So you got to think about all those things when you're purchasing a booth. And I know because I've come from the worst spray booths to not even having spray booths. So I appreciate how far I've become in my career, and I'm really happy to have something like this. So we're gonna get in there, we're gonna check the temp now that it's been baking for about 30 minutes. We're gonna try to get in there before it lets all that hot air out, and then it cools down the temp, because this does go into another flash cycle to get it to cool down before you go in there. They don't want you going in there. So we're gonna try to sneak in there real quick and get a quick shot of the temp. All right, I want to get out of here quick because it is hot. Like I said, I usually let it cool way down before I get in there, but I wanted to show you guys about how this is going to be a crucial thing when you're knowing you're getting a full cure on that product, because you got the metal temp or whatever it is that you're painting. You guys seen that the plastic parts actually were a little bit hotter than the metal. Plastic gets hotter. That's why when you're ever buffing something plastic, you have to be careful, because you will heat that up and you can almost melt that panel. So you guys see we've got our temperature up, and that's gonna ensure that we have a good cure. So if you do not have the setup to do the jobs the way you need to, I recommend personally waiting till it warms up in your area before you start doing any type of body work and paint work. So I've done it. Like I said, I know how it is to be in a place where you don't have a choice. You got to bring in kerosene heaters, propane heaters, get the shop heated up, and just do what you got to do. And I've done that. But if you have the option to wait, I recommend definitely don't be doing any painting if it is any cooler than 60 degrees. I like 70 or 80, but the max that I would say if you do not have a heated spray booth would be around 65 degrees. So I hope you guys got something out of this video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.